नमस्ते, ओमपति ग्रेवाल बोल रही हूँ.
Namaste. I'm just starting the class, and we will, after the class, we will introduce. Yes.
Okay.
Very nice to see you.
Sure.
Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So we are in chapter 9. And we are very crucial part of chapter 9, where Krishna Bhagwan is explaining the nature of Brahman. And these two verses, 4 and 5, are like foundation of Vedanta. And for this particular chapter, it is like backbone of this chapter. So we have to understand it deeply. And they are difficult concept, but if we keep at it, we understand what Krishna Bhagwan is saying. And the best way to understand with lots of examples. So we will do that. Even though we did it, we'll repeat it and make sure everybody understands it very well. So the previous verse that we did, verse 4, there were three, the whole thing is divided into 4 statements by Krishna Bhagwan. So the 3 of them were already we saw, and the 4th one we are going to see today. So just let's review what the 3 were so that we can refresh our memory. The first one was Krishna Bhagwan said, I pervade this entire universe in my unmanifest form. So when he says I, means it's Brahman, that highest reality, God, whatever you want to call it. And so unmanifest form means you cannot see me or comprehend me through your senses. That's what it means. So that was the first statement. Second statement was the world exists in me. So it's like, the world is a smaller entity. Bhagwan is large. The world exists in Bhagwan. So that's what it is. Third statement was what I do not exist in the world, but what it meant was I don't depend on the world. Bhagwan's existence is totally independent of the world, but vice versa is not true. World depends on Bhagwan. Without Bhagwan, world is nothing. So that was the third statement. So now we go to the 4th statement, which is verse 5. So I'm going to chant the verse 5. Nacha masthani bhutani pashya me yogamaishwaram bhuta bhrunna cha bhutasthaha mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. Na is not, cha is and, mat sthani, mat me. Sthani means to dwell, dwelling in me. Bhutani is all the beings. Pashya is to see or behold. Me, my. Yoga. Yoga and Aishwaram, 2 words are there. So here it says yoga is yoga, Aishwarya is divine. But these 2 words are very deep also. And what I have seen pattern in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Bhagwan will introduce some words and then later chapters he opens it up completely what it is. So here this yoga and Aishwarya he's going to open up in chapter 10 and 11. And in nutshell what it is, many in one and one in many. So when we see the world, we see variety, but we have to find God in it, everything. So that becomes a yoga, the path. And Aishwarya is you take this one thing and with the help of Maya, project it as many. That's Aishwarya, जैसे बोलते हैं ना किसी का Aishwarya means बहुत सारी चीजें हैं उसके पास, right? That's how we see it. So there's a very technical words, but यहाँ पर ज़्यादा उसका open up नहीं किया गया, पर हम देखेंगे. But just to give you an idea what yoga and Aishwarya is. So he's saying, look at my yoga and Aishwarya, उसकी वजह से ये ऐसा दिखाई देता है. Something like that you have to see. Bhuta Bhrut, supporting all the beings. So Bhagwan is the one who supports all the being. No is not, cha is and, bhutastha, dwelling in the beings. Mama, my, Atma is the self, Bhuta Bhavanaha, bringing forth beings, meaning manifesting them, kind of. So what this statement is saying is, this is the fourth statement, very powerful, the last one, and each one kind of blends into the other and supports the other. So what he's saying, that actually the world doesn't even exist in me. You say, ye kya bol raha hai? Pehle to bola ki world exists in me. Now he's saying, actually the world doesn't even exist in me. What is he trying to say? What he's trying to say is that the world is an appearance. In that pure consciousness, there is no world. It's an appearance. And we will see with the examples. And so the way we have to look at this is that he's revealing his nature, and to understand, and these are the foundations of Vedanta, so that's why we have to understand it with the core. So basically, you can translate this statement into that in his essential nature, he alone is. There's nothing else, okay? And when he says that, look at my yoga and Aishwarya, my divine yoga, I gave you some idea already what it is, and we will see it in 10th and 11th chapter in detail what it means. So now, the way Nikhilanandji is approaching is very nicely also, and both Chinmayanandji and they have their own style of approaching it, and both are extremely good. So the way Nikhilanandji approaches this is that you can look at it as 4 different stages of spiritual evolution in this. You start with the first statement and you slowly go deeper and deeper. So a sincere seeker, who's walking the path, has to cross all these 4 stages to understand it completely. And the 4th stage is the ultimate, but you cannot jump to that 4th stage because you won't understand what it means. So you have to start slowly. So in the beginning, when we don't know much about Vedanta and all that, we look at the world. We have to deal with the world, right? And our issues with the world and all that. So we are aware of the world. So first thing to understand is the presence of God in the world. So how do we understand the presence of God? By his first statement, that the world is pervaded by God. Okay, so God is present in this world, and this is first step of spiritual journey, to accept that. There will be people who will not even accept that. So don't worry about those. But, in this class, that's what we have to focus on. Hey, first thing is acceptance. And then when we accept it, then we have to churn upon it. What is he trying to say? That means world is not just inert thing, right? In some ways, if God pervades everything, then everything is alive. Okay, so that's another, thing that light bulbs open up, and then also if God pervades everything from a higher perspective, everything, whether we consider them good or bad, doesn't matter. God pervades everything, So you cannot even say the world is bad anymore. The moment we say, we may be looking at it from our angle, it might look bad, but overall, this is how it is. Mixture of good and bad from our perspective, but everything is Bhagwan. It's pervaded by that Supreme. And the other thing is the presence of God everywhere. So he came up with a brilliant example, and we have seen this example, but the way Nikhilanandji opened it up was very nice. And it was an example of a movie on a screen. Okay, so this example, against all these statements, let's see this example. So he said that the entire movie is supported by what? The screen. Screen nahi hai to movie bhi nahi hai. That we all agree. Scientific fact hai. Okay. So now, whether the movie is good or bad, you might see a movie and say, this movie was horrible. I hate these horror movies. I never want to watch them. My boys, they want to watch this horror. I don't want to. So anyway, whether it's a good movie, bad movie, both are supported by the screen. That's on one point. And then when the movie is actually going on and the screen is there, and suppose some nice beautiful scenery is there, there's a mountain is there, and maybe there is a little ant somewhere there too, there are ant crawling, suppose, this is just a hypothetical example. So if I go touch the ant on the screen, I'm touching the screen there, right? Now if I go and touch the mountain, I'm again touching the screen. Hai ki nahi? So it's like whatever is there, it's all screen only. And you were just saying, Nikhilanand was saying, you take a small young boy and you he sees the Hanumanji flying, say, suppose, he's watching this cartoon movie on Hanumanji, and you say, and Hanumanji is flying, and you tell him, hey, this is a screen, and he's not going to believe you. You say, no, Hanumanji is flying, there's no screen. See that how it is unmanifest, you can't see it, you can't comprehend it that easily. So the first statement that, hey, the entire movie is pervaded by the screen. So now we understand what it means that, hey, entire world is pervaded by that Brahman. Now the second statement, what did he say? That the world exists in me, he said. That means I don't exist in the world, the world exists in me. Okay? So now look at this screen and the movie. The movie exists on the screen, right? Without the screen, movie has no existence. So see that statement, how it became true in this example. So the screen falls off, the movie disappears. And Nikhilanand was saying, he's from Mumbai. I didn't know that, but now I know that he's from Mumbai. I'm from Mumbai too. So, he was saying that how in some of the festivals, they will put this big screen up in some of the neighborhoods, and it is tied up by like 4 different windows and all that. And the movie is going on. And suddenly, these guys who are organizer, unko movie achhi nahi lagi. Something bad was there. So वो screen को ना चुपचाप खोल दिया. धड़ाम से वो स्क्रीन नीचे गिरा और सारी मूवी बंद हो गई. फिर सब चिल्लाने लगे तो फिर से मूवी वो स्क्रीन को टांग दिया तो फिर से मूवी चालू हो गई. So he was just making a point that the movie depends on the screen. Okay, screen does not depend on the movie. Even if the movie is off, screen is still there. Okay, so there is the second statement that the movie is in the screen or the world is in God, not vice versa. And he was just saying it's a bad example, movie and screen, but it's a good one to understand. Otherwise, you don't want to compare Brahman with a movie screen, okay? But just to understand it. And then the other important thing is, most of the time when the movie is going on, we forget about the screen. We don't even, and small children, they can't even comprehend about the screen. So it is when the movie stops, then you see the screen. So now, like in meditation, what we do, we try to stop the movie of this world. Then only, so that example is also kind of matches over there. And then, of course, this statement that, hey, that I don't dwell in them that means I don't depend on them. And we already discussed that the screen does not depend on the movie. So now come to the fourth statement. What is the fourth statement? He's saying this world doesn't even exist in me. That sounds confusing, but let's, kind of look at the screen and the movie and understand what he's trying to say. So the fourth statement is, if to match it with this movie and screen, we say movie does not exist in the screen. What that means is that after the movie is over, screen ko kuch hua? Kuch bhi nahi hua. It was just an appearance on the screen. It's not like कि वो mountain है उस पे तो वो कुछ भारी से crush हो गया screen या कि कुछ blood spill हुआ screen पे तो ऐसे लाल लाल दिखता है जब movie है पर जब movie खत्म होती है there's no blood on the screen. You see that? How there is no movie in the screen? So that's what it is. So he was just saying that sansar is just like a drama happening on the substratum. Substratum को में actually कुछ है नहीं, drama सब चल रहा है. Okay? So that's how we have to look at it. And the drama is created by the Maya, and we saw एक को अनेक में कैसे बना दिया. And then he was just saying at an individual level, Maya works through our mind. So the whole world is projected for us through our mind and is colored by our own thoughts and things like that. दो जन same चीज को देखेंगे, मगर एक को एक तरह से दिखाई देगी, दूसरे को दूसरी तरह से दिखाई देगी. सबका अपनी अपनी दुनिया है, you know. So that's what it is. So, and then he was just saying, he gave another example, which was also, it applies in this modern world, is that, you know, computer screen, you know, that the entire drama is projected. Like right now, you guys are all projected on my screen. So it's like a project. And how the projection happens, bits and bytes. You know, I don't understand this coding language, but they call it binary system, right? Whoever knows coding, Meena ji probably knows all of it. So it's a coding is a binary system, just 0 and 1 से पूरा drama बना दिया. The same way in this world also. The way I was thinking is reality and Maya दोनों ने मिलके पूरा drama बना दिया, binary system. And then it's pretty nice, that example. So he was saying, Nikhilanandji, that the first step in the spiritual journey is to understand that supreme reality, you know, pervades the whole world. And then he's in me also, and he's everywhere. Because sometimes, you know, people emphasize too much, oh, Bhagwan to apne man mein hai, why you are going here and there. The truth is, when you come to know, Bhagwan is outside, inside both. You can choose where you want to see. It's easier to see, I shouldn't say easier, both are difficult in their own way, but whatever you connect with, okay? And then also that he is unmanifest, that's also we have to understand. So he's saying that third thing is that don't limit Bhagwan. Don't limit that God, that he's at one place only. People start fighting, you know, oh, wo to Vrindavan, Haridwar or Rishikesh mein hi hai, baki jagah to sab kharab jagah hai. No, nothing like that. That he's not limited to place, time or form. Yes, you feel more inspired when you go to those places because the spiritual, what should I say, ambience is there, and, you know, a lot of great people live there and things like that. That's a separate thing. But if we are trying to understand it from the core of it, what Bhagwan is. And so that's how we have to see. And then don't even limit him in a form. That's what Nikhilanandji was also saying. Don't say that, hey, Bhagwan is only in Ram and Krishna and that's it. Baki to sab aise hi hai, you know. So no, he is in all forms, and he is in a tiny little ant also, and he is in Ram and Krishna. He just manifests more. His qualities manifest more in Rama and Krishna. So he was just saying that how you can literally worship God anywhere you want to. You know, an animal, bird, river, or India mein to karte hi hai. You know, they will even worship a tree and this and that, and other people might laugh at them, but once you understand it, whatever form you connect with, you can worship God over there. There's no problem if you understand the whole thing. And then he was also saying even gender you should not get fight about. He, she, it, sab mein. You know, no gender problem here either. And so this is how we have to understand. And then he was trying to analyze this whole statement about that the world is in God. Okay? So he was saying that हम लोग ऐसे कुछ देखते हैं ना, अच्छा अच्छा बोलते हैं, हाँ, this thing is so divine. You know, divinity exists in the world. It is opposite. World exists in divinity. Okay? And there is a very powerful statement. I don't know if you have heard this statement. When I heard it, it really touched my heart. Very powerful statement. He's saying that we say that we are human beings having a spiritual experience. That's what people say, right? If I have some experience spiritual. He's saying it's opposite. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You know? So this is you have to contemplate upon this statement a lot, because it will really open up your mind, you know, that who we really are, our true nature. Because he was just saying that divinity is so vast, so subtle, and the world is like a tiny little thing existing in it. And Bhagwan will make that statement in chapter 10, at the end of it. You know, he will say, when Arjun will ask him, how do I see you in the world? And he will give, okay, you see me like this. He will say his vibhuti, because it's easier to see God and beautiful things, great things and all that. In the end, he says, oh, how much can I tell you, Arjun? I exist everywhere, and this world is just a little thing in me. You know, that he tells him that statement. And what Chinmayananji used to say, you know, you have this Krishna's Vigraha, means you see Lord Krishna, right, standing over there, and then his Anga Vastra is there, like, he puts that little चुन्नी तो नहीं बोलेंगे, जो भी वो दुपट्टा जैसे डालते हैं ना यहाँ पे, तो ऐसे दुपट्टा है उनके शरीर पे, और वो दुपट्टे का जो एक कोना है ना वो थोड़ा सा हिल रहा है, एंड दैट इज संसार, दैट्स इट. दिस पिक्चर लुक सो अमेजिंग. हम लोग तो ओ संसार बहुत बड़ा है, ये वास्ट है. नो नो, जस्ट अ लिटिल फ्लटर इन हिम, दैट्स इट. So that's how he's. Because Chinmayanand is also master of like giving examples. So then he was just saying that it's like this vast ocean, and the depth of ocean, उसमें 2-3 ये हिमालय पर्वत समा जाए, इतना depth होता है. Main ocean, Pacific Ocean, if you keep going in there. And waves are just on the surface, right? थोड़ी सी waves, compared to what the body of ocean is, waves are very small part of it. So this is how it is. The whole world is like little waves happening in that Brahman. And then obviously the world is not required, and God is beyond the world. World हो या नहीं हो, so God को कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है, because so even if when the world goes into unmanifested state, everything dissolves because it's a cycle. Even the modern scientists, they have this Big Bang theory is the same one, right? It's a cycle that expanding and going back into that one singularity and things like that, whoever knows those theory in detail. So everything dissolves, but that reality remains. Okay, when everything is annihilated, it remains untouched and unaffected. That's how you have to look at it. Now, just to make this example really seep into us, let's examine this example against rope and the snake. Because idea is, keep taking these examples, and this should really seep into us. And we know, our class knows this example, right? Because we can't do without this example. That's what Nikhilanand was saying. It's such a powerful example. Now let's look at all the 4 statements against this example, because we all know that there is a rope, but it starts looking like a snake to us, and that's the world. So first thing is that the entire snake is pervaded by the rope. राइट जहां पर रोप है वहीं पर दिखेगा स्नेक, और कहीं नहीं दिख सकता. अगर रोप वहां पड़ी है तो मेरे को स्नेक कहीं और नहीं दिखेगा. तो दैट्स व्हाट आवर टीचर यूज्ड टू से, वेयरएवर द वर्ल्ड इज गॉड इज देयर. उसके बिना हो ही नहीं सकता. ओके, सो दैट pervaded, that's how it is. And then the second statement is that the snake exists in the rope, right? Because Bhagwan said the world exists in me. So Bhagwan over here is the rope. And where does the snake exist? In the rope. Appears in the rope. And the third statement was that that Bhagwan does not depend. It doesn't dwell in the world, means he doesn't depend on the world. Now see, does the rope depend on the snake? Absolutely not. Rope is independent. Whether you see the snake or not, rope will be there. But vice versa is not true. The snake does depend on the rope. अगर rope नहीं होगी तो snake ही नहीं हो सकता. So that it validates it. And lastly, what is the rope is saying? Hey, कोई snake वेक नहीं है यहाँ पे, तुमको दिखाई दे रहा है कि नहीं? So that's how it is. The word Bhagwan is saying, the world is there. You dealing with the world because of your mind and all that. मेरे में कोई world नहीं है. It may sound a little cruel, but this is a fact from that perspective. Okay, so it's not, Bhagwan is not denying the experience, but in reality, why they say that Jagat Mithya is this is what it is. Okay, that's the 4th level of understanding. So now the last statement also tells you that there is no difference between the two actually. अगर मैं वो स्नेक दिख रही हूँ तो रोप ही देख रही हूँ मैं, बट उसको खाली ऐसे डिफरेंट उसका वर्जन दिखाई दे रहा है. Okay, that's why they say that supreme reality alone is. That last statement, even though Bhagwan said, that the world is not in me or the world does not dwell in me, the real meaning is Bhagwan alone is. That's the conclusion. Just take the rope and the snake. From the rope perspective, rope is only reality. बाकी तो कुछ भी दिखेगा. That's how you have to look at it. So he's saying that even ocean and waves, there are millions and millions of waves in there. But थोड़ी सी subtle thinking से, suppose hypothetically मैं एक wave हूँ, okay, just for an example. Now I look at the other wave and say, oh my God, this wave is bigger, smaller, and I'm looking at all the differences. But मैं अपनी थोड़ी thinking change कर दूँगा, मैं hey, I'm water. You know, with the guru's help and all, I understood I'm water. And now I look around with that concept, oh, सब कुछ water ही है. What difference it makes? You know, whether it's a small wave, big wave, everything is water. So he was just saying that just a little shift is required in our thinking. So he was just saying similarly that that if when we don't know our true nature, तभी हमको दुनिया में सब differences दिखाई देते हैं. So it's not that differences are bad or anything, but to very well know that there is unity in those differences. You know, that's where he's trying to get us. That's why that many in one and one in many ka concept, you know, we will learn more about it. Because that's the most important thing. Then he was saying, Nikhilanandji was saying that when we comprehend fully the true nature of Bhagwan and reach that state of enlightenment, then we experience that I alone am. And the people who have experienced and expressed it, like, you know, like Yogananda did in Autobiography of Yogi, that's exactly what he said, that when he had that light bulb come on about this, you know, when he got enlightened, he saw the whole world was one. He saw the oneness, you know, or like, what's his name? The Sadhguru also says that a lot, that when he had that experience. So this is what they're talking about, that they realize that I alone am, or there's one entity pervading, and that's the, you know, consciousness. That's the most important thing. And they don't see this world as separate anymore. Then that is the final stage. You know, these four statements, they carry you to that final stage. And then, you know, you can express this sentiment in different ways that they have done, these Mahatmas, that the pure existence, I alone am, there is nothing other than me. And basically when you get that enlightenment, that's when all the differences disappear. And according to Nikhilanandji, this fourth statement tells you the final stage of enlightenment, actually. Okay, and when he says these words, Nacha Masthani Bhutani, in me there are no beings, I alone am, no other things. Okay, so we already did that. Okay. And then this part, which one is that? Yeah, I am nourishing. He says that I, you know, Bhuta Bhrunnacha Bhutastha Mamatma Bhuta Bhavanaha. What it's telling you, that I am taking care of all these beings, I'm nourishing them. Why? Because of that statement that Bhagwan is the one jiski wajah se ye sansar aaya hai. So ek tarah se Bhagwan is the support of them. So uska dusra meaning diya ki I nourish it, whichever way you want. And you know, sometimes words are not the best way to express it, but we have to just try to comprehend it, that Bhagwan is the one who projects the whole world. So that's why you say he's the nourisher. And you know, when we go through Swamiji's commentary, he's going to explain what that means in a different way, and that also it will go deep into us what it means. Now, what Nikhilanandji was saying, this is the great teaching of Vedanta, this Advait Vedanta jo bolte hain na, uska ye main, these two verses explain that very well. And then another thing he was kind of pointed out, that in the English language, the word philosophy, it has a different meaning than our Sanskrit में जो philosophy का meaning है, हाँ? So हमारा जो English language में ना उसका meaning है, philosophy comes from the love of wisdom and knowledge. That's what that word means, philosophy. If you go to the root of it, you know, that's, if you go to dictionary, that's what you will find. That's what it means. But in our culture, in Sanskrit, it's called darshan. Philosophy is called darshan. And darshan means what? You can look at it two ways. I see it. experience it, so I call it philosophy, not just some kind of hokey pokey idea. Okay, so darshan, I'm seeing it. And the other word darshan is vision. What kind of vision I have about this world and me and all that. So what he was saying, that it gives you a kind of a new vision to look at yourself and the world and God. And then you see this oneness. So he's saying when we contemplate and meditate slowly and steadily, we drop our misunderstandings about it. Because usually we have misunderstanding. And then when all the false things drop, and that we accepted earlier as truth and they become false and they drop, then we attain that state of enlightenment. And then you come to realize that I alone am. So he was just reminding us that how in the 7th chapter, the most powerful statement was that verse 7, where he said that there is nothing higher than me and this whole world is strung in me like the pearls are strung on a necklace. Okay, so he is that dhaga that goes through it. And he's saying it sounds kind of difficult that this whole world is held together by that Brahman. Otherwise, सब बिखर जाएगा. जैसे धागा निकाल दिया मोती में से, माला में से, तो there's no mala, so like that. You have to see. So he was just telling us that sometimes it's hard for us to digest this statement, but we have to have shraddha, And then he's saying that slowly when you accept this statement as to contemplate on it, then slowly the false things drop. And then he gave a very beautiful example that, now that today is Ram Navami, right? So, wish you all a very happy Ram Navami. And he was just saying that he was talking about Krishna Murti, but today I'll talk about Ram Bhagwan's Murti because it actually happened that the Murti, I don't know how many of you saw the interview of the Murtikar who did the Murti. If you didn't, then go see it. That what was his journey, how he carved that Murti. So जब मूर्तिकार कोई मूर्ति carve करता है ना, think about it. It's not like कोई ढांचा में डाल दिया तो मूर्ति बन गई. He actually chisels. How difficult it is to have this perfect murti come out by chiseling. He takes a big stone and then he chisels. And Michelangelo was doing the same thing. And somebody asked him, how do you do this? So his answer was the same. Okay, so the sculptor actually visualizes what he wants to carve. So he doesn't see a stone. He sees Rama in it. Right? So he sees Rama. He has this image of Rama. This is what I want to take it out from this. So he just chisels away what is not Rama. See what I'm trying to say? He takes the unnecessary part away. It's not like he has created Rama from somewhere. No, the stone was there. Stone mein Ram hai. All he took was non-Ram away from it. धीरे 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 chisel करके उसने सब निकाल दिया. And जैसे जैसे chisel करता गया, it started becoming real, and then Rama is there, And the Michelangelo, the same thing. And they asked him, hey, how do you do this? Because he was doing it ulta hoke, pata nahi kya kya karke kar raha tha. Because he had the vision. He could see the murti in the stone. And then he's taking away what is not murti, So this is how this is a beautiful example, absolutely. So he was just saying that that's what Vedanta does for you. It slowly takes you to a journey where you chip away neti, or, this is not it. And then it shines through what it is. And, what he was giving example that it's like sun is there. Sun is always there. Sun never, but hum log ko lagta hai ki sun is gone and come back and all that. And when the sun is there in the daytime, a big thick cloud comes over it, can't see it. Cloud moves away, sun is shining. Same way he was just saying, this is what happens. That with the study of scriptures, you follow the path, you listen to what Krishna Bhagwan is saying, all the misunderstanding, false notion, they start dropping. And the final stage is you comprehend everything is Brahma. And that's when, the famous word Aham Brahmasmi comes. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So I thought the way he explained was so beautiful. That what it really means, this statement. So saying a lot of contemplation is required to, to understand this nature. And the last thing he said was very important too, that you take this example individually also. These 4 statements, take it individually, because that will help us too. So, first is that, hey, when I look at myself, that God pervades me. Ye to simple hai, And then the second statement is, I am in God. Not God is in me. हम लोग हमेशा होता है भगवान तो मेरे अंदर है. अभी वो shift करवा रहे हैं. I am in God. So he's saying usually हम लोग, when we say भगवान मेरे अंदर है, then people start thinking, oh, भगवान is some chakra, it's some little thing sitting over there. So मैं तो बड़ा हो गया, भगवान छोटा को छोटा बना देते हैं. Okay? So अभी shift करो. No. I am in भगवान. Okay? That's how he said. And the secondly, my completely dependent on it. That we all know. You take the consciousness away, the whole thing bikhar jata hai. Sari body, everything goes to dust, goes back to dust. And the last thing, Bhagwan is saying that in me, nothing else is there. So he was just saying individually we should think there is no ego in Bhagwan. No main in Bhagwan. No mind, body, nothing. That's how you kind of individually come out of this, So this is what this verse is all about. With 3-4 examples, I hope that everybody got it. And in the next verse, Bhagwan is going to give an example, because he must have looked at Arjuna's face. He still looked a little confused, too much to swallow. So Bhagwan gave a fantastic example that we will see next time. But with all these examples, any question, comment, any confusion? Because we need to understand this thoroughly to go forward in Bhagavad Gita now.
So, Umaji, when we say God is in me, I feel that if I say that to me, then I tell myself that the same God is in everybody.
That's
so we
perfect.
Are all the same.
Yes, if you can do that, that's very good. But he was just, the reason we are kind of contemplating it more deep, because sometimes we have a hard time accepting God in some bad guys, and if I say God is in me, I have so many problems and all that. How can God be me in me? God knows. All those thoughts might come. So here Vedanta is saying God is in you, and you are in God actually. So you cannot separate yourself with God at all. किसी ने बोला भगवान सब कुछ कर सकते हैं, एक चीज भगवान भी नहीं कर सकता कि अपने आप को अलग कर दे तुमसे. अगर तुम हो तो भगवान है. So some bhakt said that. So
thank you.
Any other comment? Everybody got it? I see a lot of smiles, so I think this was good exercise about this.
Umaji, you gave an example like a rope and a snake. You said if snake is not there, rope is still there. That I understand, because rope has her own entity. But you said if rope is not there, snake is not there. Is it?
Okay, so are you aware of this example of rope and snake? Are you aware of? Okay, no. So in Vedanta, this is the example. That suppose in your house, in the backyard, rope is lying. Huh? Yeah. Rope is lying, and it's dark, and you don't know that rope. Somebody dropped the rope over there, and it looks like a snake. And then you open the way. It's dark, so that you can't see very well. So when you go there, instead of a rope, you see a snake. And then you scream and you call your husband or your family member, say, oh my God, the snake is going to bite me, this, that. And then somebody comes and puts the flashlight on. The guru comes, and say, hey, Buddhu, this is not a snake, it's a rope. And then once you see the rope, you say, oh, really, I was just getting scared for no reason. That's what the example is. So what they are saying is that God is like that rope. It pervades everything. You are seeing the snake. You are seeing a different entity than the rope, but actually it is not. So that is the example.
My question is, if the rope is not there and snake is there, that means snake is there.
No, we are not talking about in this example. You have to stick with the example. Example is saying the snake you are seeing is because of the rope. अगर rope नहीं होती तो आपको snake भी नहीं दिखता.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what it's saying. Yeah, so just stick with the example. Yeah, that's all it is. Okay. So, Meera ji, you have not read for a while. Would you like to read?
Nor do beings exist in reality in me. Behold my divine yoga, supporting all beings, but not dwelling in them, is me, myself, the efficient cause of all beings.
So here I want to just say, the Swamiji used the word efficient cause. We have not discussed that. Because Sanskrit mein there are two words, nimitta karan and upadan karan. Upadan karan means material cause. And efficient cause is like the principle, non-material principle. So it's like a pot. How the pot comes about, you need a pot maker, you need the machine, and you need the mud. You need three things for the pot to be made, right? So in that example, the mitti is upadan karan or material cause. And the pot maker is the efficient cause. उसकी बुद्धि से वो बन रहा है, right? So यहाँ पर बोला गया है वेदांत में कि उपादान और निमित्त कारण दोनों भगवान ही हैं. He doesn't need any other material to manifest this world. From himself only it manifests, and he is the efficient cause. Means उनकी वजह से ये संसार आया है, उनके intelligence से आया है. So that's what it means, this efficient. Because I sometimes I get confused of what this word is. Go ahead.
In paradoxes alone can delusionary nothingness be defined and explained away by an intellect. A growing boy who is suffering from a mental hallucination that a fairy on butterfly wings coming to his window at night can be pacified and trained to laugh at it only by explaining that it is a loving and graceful child born to Mother Night and living in the house of moon.
So, Swamiji, what he's trying to say is that अगर तुम किसी को ऐसे ही बोल दोगे ना कि ओ the संसार तो मिथ्या है, कोई मानेगा नहीं. Like, what do you mean? I'm seeing it, I'm experiencing it. You can't tell me world is unreal. And that unreal is also not the correct word, because it's like mithya is the right. I experience it, but actually it's not there. Something like that, okay? So he's just saying that if suppose somebody believes in a fairy and you say, nahi, fairy very kuch nahi hoti hai, then they will not believe you. But usko thoda kahani mahani bata ke, and he just said, it is born of the, I don't even know, Mother Night and living in the house of moon, thoda shant ho jayega wo. So sometimes Vedanta has to come up with some way to make our intellect quiet, and then he's going to say in the next what he means, next verse. I mean, so not verse.
The hallucination of plurality, cognized and experienced when the self looks out through the windows of its mind and intellect, can be pacified and removed only when it is explained away, and the explanation of the non-existence can be done only in the language of a paradox. Here, Krishna is quite at it, with a pleasant vengeance, we may add.
So it's just saying that Krishna, in these two verses, he really went all out and talked about it, कि सोचने पे मजबूर कर देगा तुमको कि भाई बोल क्या रहे हैं. Because once you say, how is saying it's there, it's not there, what does it mean? Then you will contemplate upon it, because, a lot of people, they criticize Vedanta a lot. Oh, aisa bola, fir waisa bola, it's all mumbo jumbo, But then for them, Vedanta is not there. I mean, kya bolna chahiye? It's not their cup of tea, because it is going to talk in a paradox, and you have to sit there and apna sar phodna padega jab tak samajh mein nahi aayega wo. Ask question to your guru, whatever you have to do, you have to understand. Krishna Bhagavan is saying there has to be some validity to it. What he's trying to say, and that you have to open it up. So it is a language of paradox, is a very common way that Vedanta approaches it, And Krishna Bhagavan is doing that over here.
Continuing the strain of his arguments in the previous stanza, here he says, nor do things exist in me. In the previous chapter, we were told, all beings exist in me, although I dwell not in them. Now here he says that in the infinite, never has the finite ever risen up. Continuing our example of the post and the ghost, this is equivalent to the post declaring that in me, the electric post, never has a ghost existed. In pure awareness, in its infinite nature of sheer knowledge, there never was, never is, and can never be any world of pluralistic embodiment, just as for the waker, none of the pleasures of the dream world is ever available. In short, at the time of the direct subjective experience of the self, there is no cognition of the pluralistic world, which is but a creature of misunderstanding born out of the forgetfulness of the infinite.
So here Swamiji gave another powerful example of dream. We see a dream, and when we are seeing the dream, it looks so real. When we wake up, where is the dream? I can't find it anywhere. It's gone. Actually, it never was. It was just a forgetfulness, because जब हम लोग नींद में सो जाते हैं तो ये दुनिया हमारे लिए waking world समाप्त हो जाता है. And then वो हमारे thoughts jumble होके कुछ नया कुछ create करते हैं, but it's all hallucination, So that's how you have to look at it, that when they say enlightenment, they are waking up to another reality. That's how we can see it. So this example is also very powerful. In fact, our teacher used to say that भगवान ने ड्रीम बनाया इसीलिए है ताकि तुम समझो ये कॉन्सेप्ट को कि तुम्हारे बिना ड्रीम नहीं हो सकता, right? So that's the substratum. You are the substratum. But when you say, dream is there, when you wake up, what dream? There's nothing. It was just my imagination, Came temporarily, I experienced it, I enjoyed it, or I got scared, either way. Then I woke up and it's gone, उसका कोई अस्तित्व नहीं वैसे उस एंगल से.
The self is the one that brings forth and supports all beings, just as the ocean gives birth to, supports and nourishes all the waves in it. And yet, says Krishna, myself does never dwell in them. Just in the same way, the ocean can cry that I am never in the waves. I am never the waves. The mud is the womb of all pots, the sustainer of their shapes, the nourisher of their forms, and yet none of the pots, nor all the pots put together, can ever define or give a total knowledge of the mud. Pure consciousness, divine and eternal, is the substratum that sustains and illumines the entire panorama of the ever-changeable plurality.
So Swamiji explained in a different way, but it's the same concept, that I think the best way to understand it is that substratum in its pure form, it is completely pure. There is nothing there, and and it doesn't get affected by anything, and also भगवान से ही वो प्रोजेक्ट होता है. मगर the world you cannot define Bhagwan by looking at the world only. Just like he was saying that the mud pots and all are there, small mud pot is there, it cannot define what the mud is. Mud has a much larger existence, or the ocean and the waves. कोई बोलेगा एकदम डीप में चले जाओ ना, ओशन में कोई हलचल नहीं है, द बिगेस्ट शांति इज देयर. तो जो लोग डीप डाइविंग करते हैं ना, उनको जाके पूछो, वो लोग बोलते हैं कि it is the most serene. कोई समझेगा कि why they are going underneath, you can't breathe and you can't do anything. ऑक्सीजन वगैरह लगा के चले जाते हैं. अगर उनको पूछो कि क्या उनको एकदम सुकून मिलता है वहाँ पे, because it's the most peaceful world and all that, and ऊपर वाली कोई हलचल नहीं है उसमें. And that is the bigger part of the ocean, and the ocean is saying, what waves, a little wind came and is fluttering a little bit, that's all. I don't care about it. Waves cannot define the ocean. That's what Swamiji is trying to say over here.
I just had a question, and I was just thinking as we are reading about the deep sleep state, when everything else is in the unmanifested seed state or unmanifested state. That is when that alone is,
Well,
would you, I was just trying to think.
I think the deep sleep may, the seed of all what they are trying to say is that in deep sleep we have unmanifested vasanas they're talking about. ये वाला unmanifest जो बोल रहे हैं ना वो different है. Because it's like, if you go back to Mandukya, when they talked about the 3 states, remember that? Waking,
right,
dream, and deep sleep. And then they said Turiya, ko 4th bola. Turiya, right?
Yes.
4th is not actually a state, but this pervades everything.
Pervaded by all the 3. True.
So, so what you are thinking of the unmanifest is the vasanas unmanifest. But here they're talking slightly different thing.
That's in these seed states.
So I don't know which it was. I think in chapter 7 ही था एक verse जिसमें बोला कि there is another unmanifest besides the if you go back to chapter 7 you will see it. Bhagwan mentioned that there's another unmanifest. That's who I am.
Yeah, so it's really the Turiya state we're talking about here. That's right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you much.
The objects of the world, conveying their stimuli through the doors of the sense organs, create mental waves which are illumined by the conscious principle residing in all forms. If the awareness is not there, the external world must necessarily fail in giving the mind and intellect the concept of its life as a series of unbroken experiences. Just as the cotton is in the cloth, or the gold is in all ornaments, or the heat in fire, so too the imperishable is in the perishable. The dreamer can function only in the waker. The waker pervades the dream experiences, and at the same time, the waker is not in the dream, nor in fact, when awakened fully, does the dream ever exist in the waker.
So dream का example वापस दिया, right? कोई बोलेगा कि dream कहाँ से आया? तो my mind only became everything. My mind only became a mountain, my mind only became myself, my mind only became other people and all that, and then it all dissolved in me. ऐसे भी देख सकते हो तुम. और दूसरी बात उन्होंने ये जो लास्ट पार्ट है ना उसका एक्सप्लेनेशन यहाँ पर दिया हुआ है that yoga behold my divine yoga supporting all beings but not dwelling in them as I am myself the efficient cause of all being. जो पूरा संसार आया है ना, and go back to that verse 7 I was talking about of chapter 7 of that Sutra Manigana, the necklace example is the best one, that without that unmanifest support संसार हो ही नहीं सकता, बिखर जाएगा. So जो हमारा एक्सपीरियंस हम लोग कर रहे हैं ना वो substratum की वजह से हो रहा है. It keeps, it's like a glue that keeps everything together, you can say, just that's what it means. It's a little bit difficult concept, but not that difficult after we hear all these examples. I think that it really helps us to understand. That's how I felt. There is a connecting one. You want to read that? You have that?
Krishna feels that the language of paradox is proving too much of a riddle to the gross intellect of the average man in Arjuna. And therefore, in his divine kindness, the Lord provides for his disciple an example.
So that we will see next time. What example did Bhagwan give? A very powerful, very beautiful example. We'll understand it and then it will make even more sense about these 4 statements. But any question, comment, anybody wants to add anything to these 4 statements?
I just think the dream example is such a good example because maybe, like you said, dreams were created so we would become aware of the ultimate reality. Because when we are dreaming, and I'm still dreaming, at this stage of my life also, I get very vivid dreams. And when I'm dreaming, I'm like, it is so real at that time. You feel every little thing so intensely. If it is a happy dream, you feel that happiness. If it is a sad dream, you feel the pain. Everything seems so real. And then when you wake up, it's like, oh, nothing. It's all gone.
Yep.
So I think that's such a nice way to explain that maybe dreams were created so we could realize that this is what life really is. You get a little experience of the reality even before you die, I think.
Yeah, if you compare it, yeah, you will, because it is very powerful. You just like you said that in dream it looks so real,
Yeah.
that it feels so real that after waking up also, if it was a nightmare, you will be shaking for a few minutes.
Yes.
And you have to remind yourself, no, it was just a dream. So true. So yeah, and there are all these examples. One of the example will really tune with your mind, and that's okay to hang on to that example, because either the screen and the movie, or this, or the rope and the snake, or the ocean, and there are 3 examples: ocean and waves, mud and mud pots, and gold ornaments. So if you love gold, then churn upon the gold ornament example. All of them do the same thing. Any other? So we are ready for next week now, when Bhagavan will give another example, and then we will get it completely. Okay. So if there is no other comment, then I'll close Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhya mokshayishyami ma shuchah. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.